Live, the recruiting tools, big data, Blab-tastic.
Blab-tastic.
It sounds
What?
better than Blab.im, which is how I would
That's true.
enunciate.
That's true. And you have to tweet live while we're doing this because I
Absolutely.
can't do that at the same time. Katrina said, let's let the dogs run the show.
Yes. I considered it, but she decided to take a nap this morning. She's actually sleeping right next to me, so.
Well, my dog gave me the big finger when I asked her, my dog. You could see her in her face. She's like, put me down, you whore.
And of course, we're talking dogs because we have Katrina Collier who's going to join us next year with her puppy Banjo.
Not a whole year.
Oh, God. These are not 1 year apart. All right. So, Bax, what's going on in your life, Jackie? Let's start a little bit of life.
Yeah, I want to recap the week. So it was really interesting. Way interesting since the last time things were going on. We had a busy week and a busy week this week because last week was HR Tech, and it was also some other hashtag that I tweeted about. Oh, was it not Oracle? Dell World was last week. This week we have HR Tech World.
Yep.
There's a SHRM conference going on. There's the ERE conference going on. Yep. And the week before that, when I wasn't here, I was at the learning conference.
Yes.
And what I'm finding out is that there's so much talk about data and how difficult it is. But to me, it just doesn't seem like it's that hard. It's like a big math equation that people don't want to do.
Yeah. I actually, I tweeted, there was an article about it earlier this week, and I said, I don't think that HR has an issue with big data. It's that they aren't staffed with data first people. Ooh. Traditionally, HR really works with transactional data. How much, for example, how much is payroll? What's your conversion rate on candidates, right? What's your close rate? What's your fill in the blank, whatever you're being monitored and, kind of tracked on right now. Right. And all of those numbers are very transactional. They have an answer, right? It's like this plus this equals that. And that's the answer versus what big data is going for, which is here's an idea. What are the sums of the parts that contribute to this bigger picture, right? It's bigger data, I guess.
Well, I mean, the thing that is kind of getting to me is that, my background was in IT, and it used to be a big push for business intelligence when people were talking about data, and it was more of how are we going to use the data to actually do something? And it's turned into just collect as much as you can and we'll figure it out later.
Exactly. And the thing is, and I learned this actually in marketing, and I definitely didn't have good instincts for it before I was on a very analytical marketing team. But for example, when a TV ad goes off on your TV, right? Let's say you're watching Bravo and a TV ad runs. A lot of companies have a metrics model that shows kind of the like ripple impact of that one TV ad running. Right. And they know exactly what ad ran. They know when it ran. They know exactly how many signups they got from it. They know what other channels were influenced by it. Right. Right. And when we make a hire, I don't see that same ripple, right? Like when someone's hired, it's not kind of this is a really hard position to fill. How can we as a team figure out the data that supports how we got this person? Mm-hmm. I think there's a huge personal element, blah, 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 people, blah, blah, blah. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but it is human resource approach. That's what someone told me in one of my articles because, I hate people. Anyway, continue.
But I think there's also a lot of data that we're ignoring because we're leaning on our human skills instead of because we just don't have the analytical skills in our departments.
Well, I think now. I know that I think differently than most people, maybe, but I did get to be a part of this really huge recruiting project. And what we did, one of my favorite books is something I can't remember, but I'll get it in a second. But it basically talks about how you pull things together and realize the correlations that don't normally make sense.
Exactly.
And so what we did was a project. I reported to a PhD in economics, and we would look at how far people lived from the jobs, like the average distance somebody drove from, or if they, went to college or didn't go to college, what kind of college did they go to? We broke down into some really obscure factors that can go into play. But I learned something which was interesting from the learning symposium was I asked people how many of them integrate the information they find from pre-hire testing into their onboarding, because it was a hot hype conference, and all of them said no.
I was just going to say, did a single person raise their hand?
No, they were all like, oh, it was kind of like that. We need to write Blab. We need sound effects to be like, oh,
mind blown.
Yeah. I mean, they were like, oh my gosh. I was like, the data's already there. Before you start training these people or whatever, find out what would work best for learning.
Yes. Exactly.
So.
Because, I was just thinking, there's no such thing as instinct marketing, right? There's no such thing as instinct data, but there's instinct HR.
We should totally copyright that.
I know. You actually have a very good sense for instinct HR. But I do. I think so. But it's not real, right? It doesn't actually produce better results. And I think, obviously, there are a ton of really good use cases for data being for good, right? We see people just obviously making better decisions. And I'll post one of our articles. We actually just did one on Recruiting Daily about big data analytics. Let me grab this for people. So basically what it said was like, so you know how a coach picks a team? I love random metaphors. So NFL team.
There we go.
An NFL team, when they select their team, if you've ever watched one of those movies about the draft and all that, right? You see these teams sitting down with all the charts, all the sprint times, the lifts, the this, that, and the other thing, because they know, based on their analysis, what indicators will actually deliver for their team, right? And they need to be able to kind of build this cohesive team where they have all these assets, et cetera, et cetera. And for HR, I think there's a very similar model for HR. And that's basically what this article was saying, is that, we can bring the two together. We can bring the concept of a team and use big data to build better teams, to hire more efficiently. There are a ton of opportunities. Just a few weeks ago, actually, you and I went and looked at Wanted Analytics. And I thought they kind of, they have a lot of little tidbits in there that can really help people figure out how it ties all together.
Well, it was weird, though. What was funny, my friend's boyfriend wants to quit his job, take a month off, and then go back to work. And I was like, it doesn't happen like that, right? Like, you don't get to choose.
Yeah.
And for giggles, because I have been testing Wanted Analytics. So for giggles, I went in and I put logistics manager into the system. And I was like, dude, apparently y'all are a dime a dozen. I mean, I just put in the title and looked at it, and the analytics that it put together was 8 pages long.
Wow.
Like where you should work, what you should make, where you shouldn't work, who's hiring, who hired, who do we think is going to hire in the future? Yeah. I mean, and I think that's what gets people really overwhelmed. Like it was one thing when you used to go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac. It's another thing when you can see all the nutrition information. Then you're like,
yes.
Now I don't know what I want to eat.
Yeah.
Maybe I should get a salad. Oh, hell no, I'm getting a Big Mac. But anyway, The data's like that. I think we make it too difficult. And I also think that we don't begin with the end in mind. I don't think you should, well, I take that back. I do think that you should get as much data as possible and store it, but don't touch it until you actually know what you're doing, because you can get overwhelmed with how cool the stuff is, I think.
Yeah.
It's just overwhelming how much information you have when you start thinking about it.
Right. Because even like your example with the Big Mac, it's like we post the calories on the menus now because that's our perception of the most important piece of data.
Right.
I don't know that as, an HR industry, we've identified what we think is the most important piece of data. I think if you asked anyone, they'd have a different answer.
Well, and it would be different from the hiring manager than the candidate. Because I think you give one, it's always bait and switch. I don't care how good the job description is or how good the interview is. There's always that element. So what do we really want to tell candidates? And more importantly, what do candidates want to tell us when they get there? Yeah. As a corporate recruiter in-house, I always followed up with the candidates that I helped to hire and asked them if what I presented was really accurate. Let them know that this is what I had, but ask them if it was accurate to the job that they were actually doing.
Yeah.
But I think you can't. I think you can't.
Well,
I can't remember the word. I just got baffled.
Exactly. And there's kind of two sides of the data equation. There's what you need when you speak to the candidate and how you deliver that data. And then there's how you become influential in your organization using data.
Right.
When I was at HR Florida, I remember they said something. We were sitting at the bar, and the woman next to me is the head of HR for kind of like one of the, what do they call it? Like the, career networks. Each state has a career group that helps people find jobs. It's a place where you can go and apply to jobs, apply for unemployment, etc. And she's one of the head HR people for that. And what they do is kind of connect people to other jobs. Long story short, she looked at me and said, my boss asked me how I got a seat at the table. And I told her, I'm not going to use the exact language she used, but she said, hey, dummy, you run the largest financial line item in this entire company. And I've never heard you talk about it during a board meeting. Payroll. Wow. So for your in-house HR, it's like you need to understand payroll beginning to end. That's how you leverage. That's how you become part of, a voice that people actually listen to, because people will all of a sudden realize that if payroll goes out, like if you let payroll get crazy, their entire job, their whole career, like everything that's happening at that company could just poof, gone.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think about, with everything going on with analytics right now, what do you think is dangerous for companies to find out?
I think as far as HR, recruiting in general, I think it would be dangerous to figure out your price per candidate.
Yeah.
If we really took it's kind of modeling off marketing, of course, because that's my bag, but we do PPC, right? We do the cost of a conversion, all of that. If those metrics modeled over, I think we would be really scared to know how much in a year we spend on job boards, outreach, all of our paid outreach campaigns, and how many people actually come out of those paid outreach campaigns.
Guess what? There's a company that does that.
Oh, yeah?
So it's Aspen Solutions has a product called Pando. They used it for the Candidate Experience Awards for some time. And what they do is they find out about such things and try to save money within the recruiting department.
Makes sense.
I think it's probably scary. I was like, that's nuts. But people don't really factor into, when they're doing the numbers, cost, like you were saying, but then there's travel cost and things like that, and the time taking away from actual projects. Panda doesn't do all that, but it does look at the cost per hire,
Yeah,
and what people are doing right or what people are doing wrong. Because I think once somebody gets hired, they forget that they got them from a post on LinkedIn or something like that.
well, and I'm sure there are multiple touch points too that influence and apply, but we don't need to worry about that right now. I would love to just see the bottom line one to one. And I think that's also part of why big data has not kind of dug its heels in HR yet. It's because there are so many influencers, right? There's so many things, and they're trying to get all of the answers instead of
Right.
saying, here's my question, here's my answer.
Right. Some shit just doesn't matter.
Exactly. Exactly. Like,
like get off my business.
yes. Now, things that I do think, so to me, measuring social media, I'm going to say this and people are probably going to lose it. I don't think measuring social media for recruiting matters right now. If you don't have your metrics for your career page, if you don't know your career site, know where people drop off in the process, know where people drop off in your your ATS, whatever ATS you're using. If you don't know the answers to those two questions and you know answers to other questions, I don't care.
Well, I think part of it is because people feel like they're stuck with their ATS systems, and they either work or they don't work, and they are like, well, it doesn't work and I'm stuck with it, so I'm going to do something else.
Right.
I think the other part that's dangerous, and what you said makes total sense. But I also think it's dangerous that people don't, because of cloud computing, people don't realize what resources their company has. And so people are hiring people from software where they don't understand. Like they don't know that somebody has a particular software either.
Yeah.
But that's a standard. Other people, they will look at how their advertising does.
Mm-hmm.
But recruiting doesn't seem to be able to do that.
And if they do look at advertising, I don't think they're looking at it the right way. Like, you can't force everything into the same funnel. And that creates a whole other separate window of challenges. For example, marketing comparable to me is trying to say a banner ad has the same type of impact and result as, let's say, a dedicated email that sends an email directly to someone, right?
Right.
A banner ad is a flash impression. And if you think that you're going to get the same click on, like the same number of clicks on a flash impression banner ad versus an email that's delivered at your doorstep, you're crazy.
Well, I get nervous because I think that what we kind of talked about last week is how many companies too are not using it for what they say they are, and where are they getting their data in order to make some of these decisions. I think you've been on demos. I go on demos all the time. I've asked people, so who owns the data? Right. And I don't think there's been one where it hasn't stumped them just a little bit. Maybe because it's a stupid question. They're like, what? But I started asking all the time because things sound great. And it's like when things are too good to be true, there's got to be something. I mean, when you sign up to get a free car, like in front of the Walmart or whatever, you sign up for like long distance services and that you're selling your information or whatever. So it's like, what are people gaining out of it? And I think there's some new products on the market that are definitely stealing our shit. They just are.
Well, and it just cost LinkedIn $13 million. Oops. Right? So you and I talked about this too. So early this month, if anyone missed it, LinkedIn had a $13 million settlement. I actually got one of the emails.
Me too. I signed up.
Settlement. I know. So basically, they accessed our email contacts illegally and used it to contact people illegally and to grow their network illegally.
And it worked for them, minus $13 million or whatever it was.
Exactly. You're like, oh, what guy? Because conceptually, telling people to log into their email and contact all of their contacts is a brilliant marketing move. And they missed one checkbox, and it was a $13 million
Yep.
mistake. And like you just said, you have to know who
Yeah.
owns it. Because if you're in an ATS, right, and you plug in all this data and they use all your data for this, that, and the other thing, and then you're like, I want to rip this ATS out and put another one in. I mean, hypothetically, you own it, right? But can they keep it? Can they remark it? What can they do with your
Well, and what
people?
are they going to
Yeah,
do? I mean,
it's,
I started, especially now because I'm recommending software tools for recruiting. I have started reading terms of services agreements because
yeah.
I always stump the people when I ask them who owns the software. I don't think the only people in the C-suite knows who owns the software. You know, they can say, "Oh, it's not in there," or they can say, "We have it, but we don't really do anything with it."
Mm-hmm. You're probably the only person who's actually
I
read
know.
that whole
I never did
little
before,
thing.
but now I'm just I'm looking for the loopholes in it. I mean, okay, so here's a good example. This is from my Target Red card. Is it in Spanish on the site? No. This is from my Target Red card. If there's this many pages in it, I should probably read it. I mean, it shouldn't be like all I'm doing is like buying tampons, and I don't understand why I have 35 pages of information. That's note
Right.
to self. If it has a
Exactly.
book like that, read it. I think I'm probably giving them one of my
Yes.
children, or I don't know.
Just one though, and the interest rate is 18%.
Yes, 18%. But I really think that people need to be more careful with their own data. I think we've gotten so much. We've gotten into the habit of just sharing stuff because we want to.
And letting people track our cookies.
And now on every website on mine, it says, we need cookies because we want to do this. Is that okay with you? I think that's.
We want to track that if you leave this site.
Yeah.
And for anyone on this who doesn't know what cookies are, it basically means when you go to it, let's say you went to Bullhorn and you went off to another site like Recruiting Daily or ERE or like a recruiting content site, and all of a sudden you see another Bullhorn ad and you're like, huh, that's weird. And then you go to another site like Yahoo, and all of a sudden you see another Bullhorn ad. That's what cookies are. It basically means it's tracking you from site to site to see what your activity is and to follow you with
Which
advertising.
they do all the time. And I'm wondering, like, I go to figure out what's on sale at Macy's, and on the side, I'm like, why are they telling me about an ATS system?
Zappos is the one that's always following me. And I'm like, stop showing me those shoes.
That's because they know you're going to buy the damn shoes.
I know. And I've proven them right.
I know.
So
I
many
always
times.
say that. I'm like, I am such a sucker, man. I should just call all these marketing people and say it worked.
I know. Well, I think if cookies and kind of data privacy are something that are of interest to anyone on here, I would strongly recommend looking at the European model for cookies and tracking. Because they have much higher standards as
In
far
general, in
as,
Europe, they have
for example,
higher standards.
Right. Well, I know that, for example, if they put a cookie on you while you're on your site, you have to give explicit permission, i.e., a little banner pops up and says, "This site uses cookies. Please give permission to use these cookies." And there's a little yes checkbox that you have to check for them to be able to get that data.
How many people do that?
Fun fact.
How many people check the box, I wonder?
It's a great question. I honestly don't know. I was going to say, fun fact, they also hold TV to higher standards. We were talking about this. I did a TV ad for London, and there's actually a little like government section that manages TV and internet use. And the TV group reviews every single commercial that goes live on the air in the UK for proof. So, for example, if you say, we have 10,000 babysitters, you have to show them 10,000 babysitters.
That's crazy.
Right?
Well, speaking of data and speaking of London, the Prime Minister in the UK this week decided that they were going to have a name. They took the names off of resumes for people who were applying for the government. And of course, in my past life, diversity recruiting was all my thing. And so I was like, this is brilliant, because in order to hire people, they just look at the resume. They don't get to see what their name is before they make a decision to bring them in for an interview, which is important. And again, like, this is something that's just chapped me forever, is that one of the ways that people tell people how to recruit for diversity candidates is by their name, by their surname. And so they can figure out what race they are, which pisses me off because my last name is Clayton and my maiden name was Forster. So nobody was going to find me. So it just hurt my feelings, I guess, that nobody was going to find me. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, how do you know, especially with all of this, you know, such an integrated environment and multicultural environment, like, how can you look at somebody's name and make a decision on whether or not they're diverse or not? Or because people get real specific too, they're looking for. So yeah. I am very, very excited that they did that.
Well, and I think that's a great example of kind of big data for good. Right? Like removing one data point and seeing if it has a better influence on the government's hiring. I would be interested to see if after they removed the names, if more candidates were moved to interviews.
Really?
There's one data point to look at.
I want to know.
In the 60-day period, you know, in the 60-day period where they removed, you know, emails, or excuse me, the names, versus the 60-day period where they had names prior, were there more candidates who moved on to the first interview? It'll identify inherent bias.
I want to know.
Right? I would love to do that test on some big corporations in this country and just see what happens.
We should do one thing that would be cool that we could probably do on probably more for blogs than tools or daily, is to do a matchup of people's names and people's pictures. And let's see if they get it right.
It's like an HR bias test.
Let's do it.
I love that.
All right.
Yeah. We can do a quiz. I can build a quiz with pictures.
If y'all want to know how things get done at Recruiting Daily, this is it. You're witnessing the brilliant. It will be live.
Idea. Build it. I'm like writing it down now.
You're probably sending me a
little bias quiz. Yeah.
But
you bet I am.
But you know, this is the thing that I've been looking at lately, getting back to more of the data stuff. I really think that we're getting in over our heads. I'm kind of having a love-hate relationship with it. Mm-hmm. I just got a message with Willem. He has an interview that he has to cover for somebody else, so he's not coming. So I just texted him, I hate him and everybody from the Netherlands.
Yeah, fun fact, everyone who's on this call, all of our co-presenters dumped us today. Originally, Jackye and I had, you know, brought on some big data experts, kind of big data technologists, I would say. Not even like, because being a big data expert, what does that even mean? I don't know. Considering every article I read to research for this, if you search big data HR, the headlines read something like this: it's time for HR to consider big data. Why isn't HR using big data? What was the one I read? It was like an analyst report. It said, big data and human resources, a world of haves and have-nots. And I was laughing because I'm like, what do you mean haves and have-nots? And by Joshua Burson. So this is like a real analyst writing this. And I read it a little more. And basically what he said is, what I believe as well, that HR has all the data any company needs. And they're not using any of it. Have data, have not looked at it. That was the summary of his very
I saw that. I saw that too. I always start at the bottom and go up to see if I, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Oh, there's a point. Okay, I'll go back.
Yeah, exactly. So Jackye, let's try to educate the folks. Now,
educate our people.
Let's educate our people. Big data. We're both in agreement that HR we haven't even touched it. HR recruiters, everybody. I cannot give you one use case where I know people are using data really well. And if somebody has one, post it. I'm more than happy to look at it and check it out. But let's do three data points that you think everyone in our industry should know if you're hiring.
Sure. I think that it's important to know where people are coming from. And this is just from a recruiting standpoint, because my background was doing a lot of Java developers. It's really important to know what companies they're coming from. So I think last company is important for any position, because then you know where to poach from or where not to poach from. I mean, there's some companies where you say, we don't want anybody from this company because they did it wrong. So I think that's important. I think the other thing is going to be salary.
I was just thinking that. From my brain to your mouth.
They need to have a good, accurate range, and especially when they're recruiting from other states, they need to know that in Waco, Texas, they get paid $60,000, but in New York, they get paid $200,000. No offense, Wacoans, wherever you are. But I mean, it's just the fact. So don't try to bring somebody into your state who's used to making more money at a less pay rate.
Yeah. And I heard a great quote about salary yesterday. He said on our webinar, actually, he said, you never use money to compete, but always know your
That's
money.
Right.
Always know the salary information. Yeah. Never to compete, though.
What do you mean?
It's not a competitive advantage because money is the same. Anybody can match money. You can't match culture.
Ooh, that's a whole article.
Right?
Ooh, I like that. That's pretty deep.
I know. I was like, I just had this light bulb moment. Like, so many times we think that money is the number one indicator, and it's not.
I know, because I work for Recruiting Daily. What? In my kitchen.
We have so much fun.
Oh, I know, but I love you guys. Love you guys.
Right. Yeah. This is my donated chair from my mama. My donated desk.
This is my fire extinguisher and air conditioning. All at the same time. Just kidding. The other thing that I think is important for people to know is nobody does succession planning anymore. But it'd be a good idea to know who is leaving what department internally. It's a key data point to recruiting. In order for you to do your recruiting job better, it's good to know that people are leaving frank. I'm going to sneeze.
Yeah. All right. Bless you.
Thank you. I mean, it's important for people to know. Recruiters need to do their own succession planning in order to be, I mean, this is from a corporate level, really, but need to know where they're going to have to make their next hire and be proactive in their approach.
Yeah. And so I would add to that, the other metric is, you already mentioned kind of where everybody comes from, but I would want to know where everyone drops off.
3 months, 4 months.
It's kind of exactly on both sides, from retention and from your website. Where's the number one page that people leave from? What you gonna do about it? Because that's the whole point of big data and this concept, and why it's a big deal in our industry right now, is because it plugs holes. Yep. If you just have big data to like write up whiteboards and email your sales team, sales team, if you're recruiting, your hiring managers, whatever, if you just have data to plug it in, kind of like some really bad presenters I've seen on the speaker tracks. Yep. Those people.
I've met them.
74% of people use big data. And you're like, bullshit, 74% of people use big data.
I think you should stand up and say it next time.
Shenanigans. Well, I'm that asshole because I'm like, nah. Where'd you get that? Is that a recent survey or a past survey? What do they define as big data? And kind of that's the analytical mind that you need on your team. Yeah. So here's another question. If I was trying to build my HR team to have analytical people on it, to kind of move towards big data, because reality, we're not going to build new roles, right, for data. Not this year.
Not this
Maybe
year. I was
next
going to say
year.
not today.
Yeah. I think long term, we will see data analysts sitting in departments, both at big recruiting firms, staffing everywhere. Anyone who hires will have a data person.
But we used to hire accounting people, P.S., in HR. That was my
That's exactly
idea.
what I was about to ask.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think accounting is a good example because accounting is a very structured environment, like HR sometimes is.
Accounting's already known the shit. That's the thing that people don't get. Accounting has been tracking this for years because they have to know where the money's going. So they already know who's been spending money on it and what they're doing and when somebody drops off. They know when we get new hires. They know all of them because they have to put them in payroll, like company-wide. They have to take them off payroll. They've had the information, but nobody talks to the accountants. Yep. Do not talk to the people behind the wall.
Yes.
And if they and so I always tell people, if they're trying to start a new data team and they're not really sure where to go, get somebody who was in accounting. Because the other part is they like finding trends. So
I was going to say the other place I'd look, marketing data analysts, like, the data ninjas.
Don't hire anybody. I have a firm. Don't hire anybody who uses ninja on the resume. Period.
Jackye,
because you found them.
Would you hire me?
Do I have ninja on my resume? I think I have it on my resume.
I do, because I was the social media ninja at monster.com.
But if that was your title, that's
was my official title. I have a business card to prove it.
Yeah, if it's in your subject line, then no. But I think it was your actual job title.
It was. No, so, if it's in the little description at the top where they're like, I'm a ninja.
Yeah, that's what I mean. When the cover letter says, dude, I'm a ninja, totally stealth. I'm looking at you right now. Don't hire that guy. Just don't. Not safe.
Right. No. I'm with you. And I think asking them questions to part of the interview process, I don't think it should be the formerly Google-esque, because they're not using these questions anymore. The little brain stumps. I don't like that junk. I think that's playing games with people. But I do like asking questions about how someone identified a problem and what resources they used to find the solution. Okay. So I don't want, if in a data role in my organization, I don't want somebody who says, I asked 12 people. I want the kid who's like, okay, so I pulled these 5 reports. I pulled these 2 data points. I came down to these 2, saw the correlation, did this, those kind of people. And, I've found, just like you said, every person that I've hired to do data came from an accounting role or came out of a statistics kind of background within an organization.
Or of course, data people. There are data people. I just think that we need it. All it comes down to is your specifications. I mean, that's what happens with it's not just let me think how I'm going to say this. You need to have somebody who has consultative experience in a role where they're not just putting together what you tell them, because you need to understand exactly what somebody needs. I don't think that people can articulate very well what they're actually looking for. And they'll say, we want to know everybody that was hired in 2012. Well, not really. What you really want to know is how many, maybe you can bring it down to a certain role, or how many people were promoted internally, or how many people, because that doesn't give you the answers. You have to be specific and deliberate.
Yes. And it's almost the hard to find from the answer. Mm-hmm. I want, or what you're trying to get at, I want better retention. For that question, I was thinking, okay, in 2012, what you really want to know is how many people are still here.
Right.
And then you want to know everything about that group, that smaller group, kind of their source of hire, what their onboarding program might have looked like, walk through their process, because they were all in the same year, hypothetically, they had a similar experience, right? And kind of work backwards from that into this group of people was retained. They were retained if I had to make my best guess, my best big data guess, it's because of this, because the majority of the people had this influencer, whether it's a
It was
person.
usually me.
Exactly.
And at my company, not kidding, when I had less than 2% people leave the company
Wow.
that I recruited for. And it was because I told them it was a shit show. And so they didn't quit because they were like, well, she told me it was a shit. I mean, we went through everything. I completely used truthful information. But
Yes.
I think you reminded me of my days as a business analyst, because I think that's kind of why my mind goes there, because it is kind of a balance. Because I would always ask, what are you going to do with it once we get you the information that you need? What are you going to do with it? And I would ask as a recruiter, I would ask the same thing. Like, okay, so they'd say, we want 3 years. And I'd say, so what does 3 years look like to you?
Yeah.
You know,
What's happening
maybe I
in
got
those
it all
3
in
years?
6 months or whatever, you know? So what is somebody who has 3 years able to do that someone who has 1 year is not able to do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I guess
Exactly.
again, I think people need to really figure out what the problem is, like you said, and go backwards, because the it's already there.
Yep. And we
that's
know what influences that answer.
Right.
That's the thing. It's HR does have great instincts. Recruiters do have great instincts, right? We know, we have an inkling of why, but we're not taking that moment to pull the data points to actually figure it out.
Right.
It's not so hard. You don't actually have to like click on things. And I always, a fun fact about Excel, you can pull like, they call it a cohort analysis. That's the very fancy, but it's how the numbers are related. They have one built into Excel. So you just highlight all your data and you're like, cohort analysis, and it shows the relationship.
Bye, Aaron.
Bye, Aaron. Yes, please. But like with all of that, you know, we have it. We can do it. Big data is doable. Yeah. Which I think there's another great opportunity here for you and I to pull together some information for HR to figure out, you know, like 5 questions you can answer with big data that you probably haven't thought about, right? Because I think,
right,
exactly, it's just about making data part of the routine. I've been in plenty of marketing organizations where we just burnt money. We looked at the numbers, raw data. Okay, it worked, it didn't work, this, that, and the other thing, move on. But the actual relation of all of that stuff, if we just stop for 1 second and think about it, I think there's a huge opportunity, and so does the internet. Because again, search HR and big data, the results are just basically making fun of us.
I went to, when I started as a senior recruiting manager at that company that I always talk about with that guy that I hate, that I'm going to name one day. We used to spend $3 million a year on Career Builder. 3 million. I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah.
It seems like at some point there should be an intervention where they say, stop, the problem's internal. Yeah. But they never told us that. I mean, I told them that, but you know, I'm an ass, so you know.
That's what makes you great on our team.
Oh, see, that's why it works out.
It's part of your culture fit.
I think I'm a good culture fit.
Absolutely.
But I just, you know, I think what's frustrating is that, okay, we've got the message. I think ultimately we have to go back to business intelligence with big data. It has to be specific of what we're trying to know. One of the best examples of use it for good, use it for evil, it's both, of data, is Disney World. I used to live in Florida. We used to go to Disney World probably, I don't know, every 2 months. So what they do, have you ever been there? Have you ever been to Disney? Yes. Okay. So they give you your card and your card is attached to your room. So they know where you are and they know what hotel you're at. You can also use it to buy all of your food. You can also use it to buy all of your gifts, and they send them to your room. You can actually use it, you know, you use it to get into the pool, you use it to get into the, so they freaking know not only where you're going, but what you're spending it on. It's freaking ridiculous. So then they also know that you go every other month. So they would start telling me stuff and sending me things. They used it to a competitive a competitive advantage, but they also used it to make me feel better as a guest because I didn't have to carry my bags around. I didn't have to carry multiple credit cards around. Of course, I could leave it in my room, but then they would know that I left, so they could probably steal all my stuff because they know I'm on the freaking, I don't know, it's a small world. But it made it a better experience for me. So that was the use it for good, but it's also use it for evil because they can turn that information around. I think it would be smart for people to try to build in some of that analytics and have your own Disney World at your at your place, with your job sites. Like, let me help you do this. I can help, you don't have to do this. You can just upload it here. You can just do this. You can just do this. And with the call to actions, you have that information. It's time really for some form of analytics and marketing and HR and training to all get together because they all have really important data. Exactly. Also with IT, I just think people just need to talk to each other.
Yeah. And HR has to take a risk to do this. We have to. Just generally, and I keep saying HR, but really I mean anyone who hires or helps hire anyone has to take a risk on data.
Well, now the risk, of course, is that we're sharing things and getting things that we're not supposed to get.
Hypothetically, but if someone submits all their information to you, it's yours.
It's not hypothetical. This is something only we know. Only people in HR recognize that happens.
That's why the lawyers also sit in this department.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling, it's the most unpolitically correct group. It's the most, bastardized group is recruiting in HR.
Right.
Well, because we get so many things, so much information that we didn't really hope to have.
Right. So, and I think our message, and I know you'll agree, is
look at Katrina.
We can make that happen. And rarely are there two Katrinas in one conversation, by the way, ever.
I know that's
so I'm like, yeah. But we're not going to let our data sit anymore. Let's use it. Let's figure out how we can divide it. Slice and dice, as my old marketing manager used to tell me. How we can slice and dice and figure out influencers to make better decisions. Because in the end, if you're just playing in Excel and you're not actually getting an answer that helps you make a decision, it's useless.
I just think people need to balls up. I mean, for example, I had a friend who used to run an IT security company, and he used to sit in the parking lot and he would get all the company's information. He would do his presentation. They would say, no, I don't think it. And then he'd say, like, by the way, tell your wife happy birthday or whatever. Like, he had all the stuff that he got, and they would be like, whoa, I had no idea. And then they would hire him. I think at some point you need to do that with human resources and say, hey, you really need to know what's going on with your people and where we're going culturally and this and that. And when they say, no, we're too busy, send them a note and say, hey, by the way, nice pants. I liked what was going on with your, yeah, exactly. They just need to know. Like, they don't need to know. Like, they don't know that human resources have that information. And I think human resources needs to recognize the power of that, because we're just like, yeah, whatever, because we're used to it. You don't realize that we're smarter than people think that we are.
Absolutely. So we have about 9 minutes left, and I want to touch on some of the fails, because you know how I love a good laugh. Tell people about the flashlight app, the one where they were stealing people's information.
Oh,
this is data for bad. Evil.
Okay, so an Apple app. It started at the very beginning. They had a flashlight app. Everybody needs a flashlight app. It was one of the first, and people would say sure, and they click it, and you would agree for them to get all of your contact information, your calendar information, any of your social media shares. They basically knew everything about you, and people agreed to do it because they need a flashlight so freaking bad, right? They couldn't turn up the screen or whatever. So then you agreed to let them sell your information. So somebody found out and said, oh, you can't do that. And they said, okay, we'll turn it off. But they didn't. And people still had it. They couldn't remove it from people's phones. People already had the information. So it's still there. Like, I think I forget the actual name, but I mean, you don't even know this person. You probably have the app on your phone somewhere. It used to, a lot of times it was like a recommended app too. Like they pushed it out. But there's somebody out there who wants to help you see that you let them see everything about you.
Mm-hmm. And what
It's
about
like a
your,
drone
yeah.
app.
Well, well, and then there's all the apps and that, try to, obviously, there's a lot of times, I'm sure anyone on this call has let Twitter access your information and they
Twitter
give you
has
that
all my
little
shit.
list of what they can do on your behalf. Turns out Jackye picked one that, I don't know, made her tweet about escorts.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. And I'm so glad I have friends from the Twitter sphere. Most people, they know my Twitter handle. They might not even know that I'm a real person. I am not a robot. I have several robots. So I had a robot that was letting people know about escorting jobs, and it had pictures of like naked people. And finally, since people follow me on Twitter, quite a few, and I'm so vocal, they said, Jackye, you're telling me about escorts. And he was like, are you in any business? And I was like, no. And then I was like, oh shit, can I make some money off of it? I probably could make some money, but no. And then it was like horrible. Yeah, I mean,
Health hookers.
I have children. Yeah, I think we should do that though, right? We could probably really get it. We could probably get hookers pretty good, but
well, I think we
guess
both know that eventually the laws are, yeah, the laws are going to catch up with, these apps and these tools and stop collecting all this data.
They're never going to catch up.
Exactly. That's the thing. The internet moves faster than the government ever will.
Absolutely. I mean,
Sorry,
what they're trying to solve right now is probably something nobody even uses.
Yet.
Like Fox Pro. Just kidding.
Oh, yeah. The government.
I think they're still on Lotus Notes. Just kidding.
I wouldn't be one bit surprised. Both my parents are military.
Thank you, Katrina. We can probably get hookers pretty good. We could. It's a Jackye Claytonism. We could get hookers.
Jackye can recruit anyone.
I can. Shit.
Like, I will hashtag it. I will employ your brand. I
will. Send me your request.
Oh, man.
I'm all over it. Raise the roof.
Oh, goodness. On that note, let's wrap it up.
See, I'm not different. There are some people who are like crazy on Twitter and you meet them in person and they're not. I'm full transparency.
I think that's also part of the Recruiting Daily.
Again, back to if anybody would like to do a quiz, and I would like to do this personally, on the culture of Recruiting Daily employees, me and Katrina and Matt and Bridget and Noel and Ryan, I think people would be very interested to know. I think we might all get put in a loony bin. I don't think we should take the test, but
maybe
someone would.
We are going to do the bias quiz, though.
We're going to do that, and then next week we have Katrina Collier, my BFFE, my virtual best friend forever and ever. I'm just going to keep adding letters to that until it gets really big. So we're going to be talking about what was it? She made me pick it.
I think candidates and clicking.
Right? Yes. There's not a tool in the world that can make a candidate respond.
Yes, that's her specialty, and we are so lucky to have her even consider joining us. So I'm looking forward to that one.
We are. Katrina, Katrina's hot shit.
I'm stoked.
I know. It's the closest I can get to meeting her. I'm very excited. She's always asking me if I'm gonna be. She's always like, "Are you gonna be there? Can I meet you?" And I'm like, "Nah, dude. These dudes don't let me go anywhere." That's why I'm so good on Twitter, because I'm at home.
Yeah.
But I'll be there.
All right.
Well, I appreciate everyone. And so Steven's going to be with us. That's awesome. And Katrina, I think we're going to be all over it. Bring your coffee and We will see y'all.
Our favorite UK recruiting teams.
And thanks, guys. You're our favorite.
Yes. Bye.